Okay, so yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. So my name is Moisés Moreno. I am the I've been working with the Elsevier for 5 years and a half now, and yeah, I'm responsible for pure metadata and Scopus in Elsevier in the northeast of the U.S., Mid-Atlantic, and all Latin America. So the idea of today is just to explain a little bit more about what is our index process, how it works, what are like the key things that you have to put attention on, and yeah, please, if you have any question, please don't hesitate to make it. So just to start, and maybe you already know this, I won't take a lot of time on this, but Bill, Scopus is the largest abstract and citation database of peer-reviewed literature, that is in the world right now. These numbers, might change. Scopus updates every day, so all these million numbers and publishers and books numbers are changing all the time. But more or less, we have more than 5,000 publishers with more than 23,000 journals, active journals. Let's make the difference because we have more than 34,000, but there are some journals that are discontinued because maybe they are not published anymore, because they don't comply with the requirements in terms of quality that Scopus has. We also index books. Actually, now we have more than 200,000 books, and there is also now a new process to request to index books into Scopus. And well, the idea of Scopus is to have this trusted citation and abstract database where researchers can look for information that is real scientific information, and yeah, you can track and make analysis, find collaborators, and do different tasks in terms of research. But the most important part, one of the most important parts for Scopus is that when a researcher goes in, or anybody goes in, they know that this is trusted data from trusted sources. There is, just to give like a big overview, when we are talking about like expert curation, we're talking about according to Ulrich's Web Global Series Directory, there are like around 104,000 active scholarly titles, from which only 47,000 are peer reviewed, and well, we index 24,000 journals in the Scopus. And why? Well, we believe that we have to be careful in terms of quality and what we are selecting, and of course more and more because there are more predatory journals and there are different kind of publications that are because of different interests, they are not doing like the right job in terms of exposing and sharing real scientific data that helps in deliver new research. Uh, Again, this is like a big overview about the books that we have. We have journals, we have books, we have conference, and also we have patents. We have around 40 million patents in Scopus, and all this information can give us to affiliation profiles, which are institutions or research offices, but also author profiles. And we have more than, it's not 75, we are close to the, now we are close to the, I think 80 million records. We are in 79, something like that. Well, this is again what we are doing is we are interrelating all this information in order to give you insights and analysis for all these different researchers and funding bodies, universities, etc. Um, there is a misperception about like what is the content coverage in terms of if it's only related to health science or only related to physical science. In terms of Scopus, we try to make as much as possible this balance between social sciences, arts and humanities, which we believe that is really important in terms of research as well. And this is like you can see like the different distribution of the four main areas or disciplines, which is life science, health science, physical science, and social sciences. We have a really big part of sources that are related to social sciences. And then, well, the topic of this, we talk a little bit more. We talk a little bit about Scopus, but you know, the thing is, what is about the indexing process? So, first of all, the benefits. The idea for an editor just to put their journal or index their journal into Scopus is to have higher visibility for the journal, but also for the people that are contributing to this journal. So Scopus, it's very well used around the world in different, like rankings, times higher education, QS. They use Scopus as a data source. Shimago, they use Scopus also as a data source. So the idea behind putting your journal here is to give you more visibility, international visibility. And this is important because maybe you have the best publications and the best research, but if nobody is using that to generate new knowledge or new research, actually is losing the real value of that research. Also, of course, increase international collaboration. At the end, what we want is to collaborate more and more with people from Japan, China, the US, Latin America, different places, Europe, in order to grow this collaboration. Because also we know that there is a big correlation between uh, impact in terms of citations and in research in general, that is very related to international collaboration and even industry collaboration. And yeah, the higher possibility to be read and then read, sorry, and then cited. It's really important to give bigger value to your research, but also contribute to this big community of specialists that is Scopus. This is just an example. There are some journals that just start to get indexed, and they start to get more and more publications because they get more, they receive more papers that they want to be in the journal because they know that this journal now is indexed in Scopus. So also another benefit or consequence about being indexed in Scopus is that you can get more and more submissions into your journal, which is really good. So the indexing process, how it starts? Well, it's pretty simple. It's a free process. Please be careful. We never charge anything in order to be indexed in Scopus. It's a free process. So be careful about that. And it's a pretty simple way to start it. And you can just go to this page, suggested.scopus.com, and you can just start right away. The process is it's a 7 steps process where the editor is recommended that the editor do this process, and the recommendation is because he knows everything about the journal, he knows everything about the ISSN, electronic ISSN, if they use what kind of peer review process. So this is important, and this is why we recommend that the editor does this. However, if you are a researcher, you are also able to recommend you can recommend a journal for inclusion in the Scopus. The review process takes at least 1 year and approximately is around 2 years, more or less. And the reason for that is because we make a quantitative revision or review, but also a quality revision in terms of the science. What you are publishing. If what is it about? If it's new knowledge, which are your researchers? This kind of analysis we make because we want to have relevant data, relevant research in this platform. Um, yes, you can start this process. Just a recommendation is please review that you are following or having all the minimum requirements before doing this. And this is important because at the end, if you suggest your journal, it might take 1 year, and then it looks like you are missing one part of the requirements, and then you get rejected. So basically, you lost all this time, which is, it's yeah, it's time. So it's better just to be sure that you are in compliance with all these minimum requirements. And if you get rejected, we hope you don't, but if you get rejected, is more because of what you are publishing or about citations or something more in depth in terms of your outputs, and not because you missed the titles in English, right? So that's a really a recommendation. So the review process is we received, we received this form after like all these steps and all this information, and we review if you have like the minimum requirements, which is I'm going to explain more, but like titles in English, abstracts in English, your web page, and all of that. If you don't comply with any of those, we are going to reject right away, or in a couple of months, we are going to reject your journal, request. If after validated you get like the minimum requirements, then there is like process called enrichment, which basically means that we are going to require more data or more information about your journal, like maybe we require more articles that you send to us, or maybe another number or issue of your journal, so we have more information in order to make a decision. And the idea is to gather as much information possible to the CSAB. The CSAB is our committee, the review committee, which are, and I have a little explanation about it, but it's all this group of people that they are really good researchers, and they have journals. They have some journal, like editor backgrounds, some of those. So they have all this experience in terms of making research, but also publishing research. And they are the ones that are divided by different disciplines, and they're the ones that are reading your articles in order to decide if this is relevant new research that has to be published, and it should be in the Scopus. Once they review it, it could be, sorry for Spanish, accepted or rejected. So once it gets to this point to the CSAB, if it gets rejected, it could be, we call it like a improvement time, which is around from 1 to 5 years. And normally the average is around 2 years. And the reason for this is, for example, you could be a journal for medicine and you've been publishing for 20 years already. And for some reason, nobody is citing you. Nobody is, looking for, citing your research. So this is like something that the committee looks into. And if they think that this is, this is um, a requirement that you are not meeting, and therefore you are not going to be able to be in the Scopus in this at this moment, they're going to reject you and give you this improvement time. Why? Because you cannot change this citation trend in 1 month or 2 months or even 1 year, right? So this is how it works. Of course, we tell you why you get rejected, and when you try to, we tell you like you can try again like in 2 years, and we give you the date. The next time that you try again, you should give and send a letter saying how you comply now with that thing that you didn't comply before, and how did you improve your journal to be more successful in that regard. If you get accepted, well, you get a letter from us where there's like congratulations, successfully you are now in Scopus, and then we start like this process about how we are going to gather your data, your metadata, in order to be in the Scopus synchronized as quick as possible. There are some places like the US and in Russia, I think in China also, there are different places where there are like a local committee. So basically the process is the same, but there is like a pre-selection or local committee extra step where there is like a committee in the national level that they can give a recommendation, in favor, or not in favor. Like this journal, we know that it's a predatory journal, so you shouldn't even try to analyze it, like these kind of things. But also they could give a recommendation about, we know that this journal is very very important for the local community in terms of this kind of research. And well, basically the pre-selection goes on, the enrichment process, and after the recommendation of the local committee, there is like a CSAB review, and again you get like accepted or rejected. This pre-selection local committee, the idea is to give a more local sense to the global CSAB committee, right? So for Scopus, we have like this quality that we call the quality is it's a combination of different things like the format and the ethical standard, how you are publishing, also how relevant it is. I think I mentioned this a lot of times in terms of relevance, and also how diversity it is. So we understand that there are some very focalized research, but even though, for example, there is a journal for Mayan research, Mayan culture, and there are different collaborators and authors from all over the world. So it's not about just like, oh, because it's something into this region, only people from that region is publishing this journal, which is like our quality for Scopus. Like these three different concepts is what is important for us, and what it means for us, the real like quality of a journal in order to be in Scopus. In there's something important, which is to be in line with the aims and scope of the journal. So this is something important. Sometimes, for example, the title of the journal is International Journal of in whatever. It should be international, right? If you have the word international in your title, it should be really international, not only Mexican or only people from Ecuador publishing in that article and reviewing that articles in that journal, right? Also, if you are saying like this journal is about publishing in this area or this discipline, in this kind of specific disciplines, um, your article should be in line with that. It's not like my journal is about medicine, but then I'm publishing about uh, engineering now. We understand that the science is every time more multidisciplinary, and that's okay. Uh, but you should be compliant with what you are saying that your journal is doing. So the minimum is to be peer reviewed, have an ethical statement. This is really important. The ethical statement. Most of the journals that I've seen to get rejected is for two things: is because they are not compliant with the periodicity that they are saying, this regular publication part, and the second part is because of ethical uh, the ethical statement. Basically, the ethical statement is a place, text that you put that mentions like what are the responsibilities of the editor, of the authors, and the reviewers, and what's going to happen if you notice that there was a malpractice, in terms of they manipulate data, or you find out that something is wrong with your publication. What is the process, or what are you going to do in order to retract that article? In where, how are you going to let the research community about these kind of practices that could happen in your journals? That happens in Elsevier journals, in any journals. It's still happening, but the idea is to try to mitigate that, and better do our work in terms of having real research and correct data. Also, you need to have titles and abstracts in English. It doesn't matter if your journal is completely in Spanish or Chinese or Japanese or any kind of language. We have more than 40 languages in our journals in Scopus are more than 40 different languages, so it doesn't matter. But at least your titles, abstracts, and keywords should be in English. Why? If somebody is looking for something in the Scopus, maybe I'm a Japanese student and I'm going to look for something, I'm going to look in English, right? And maybe I arrive to a journal that is from Spain and it's in Spanish, the full text. Maybe I'll decide if I want to translate that or not. But the idea is to be able to discover knowledge all over the world. And Roman script references, that means not to have like Arabic or all these different, you know, types of characters. And something important is at least you have to have published 2 years. Your journal has to be at least 2 years old in terms of publishing, and and you should. This is it says like 10 articles, at least 10 articles published per year. It depends. Also, something important to mention is uh, it doesn't matter if your periodicity is every 3 months, every month, or every 6 months. We have like some journals that are only one issue per year, which is fine. Um, so it doesn't matter the periodicity, just to be on time. If you are saying that you're going to be on this in this month, the year, you should be in that month, right? Okay, and of course have a ISSN. It could be only the electronic one or both, but you need to have an identifier. You need to have the ISSN. Otherwise, you'll be just rejected from the beginning. Journal policy. This is one of the sections about is it should be like a convincing editorial policy. There should be transparent. It should be able to know how the since somebody submitted a paper, how all this review, the process is going, what's going to happen afterwards, who's the main editor, all this should be transparent and available in the website, like a type of peer review. It could be open review, double blind, single blind. It doesn't matter, but you should be able to tell which kind of a peer review process are you doing. Also the diversity and geographic distribution of editors. You can put it in there transparent. Either way, we are going to make an analysis using Scopus data about who are your editors. And we think that as more geographic diverse your editors are, as well as your authors, it can give you more. Your journal is going to be more enriched. Is going to be more rich uh, in terms of any kind of research. So even though it's a very local topic or anything, this is really really important to have. Not like 90% of authors are everybody from the same university, for example. That's something that we look into. The quality. So that is a real contribution, new knowledge to the field, not only rewrite things, or not. It's not only about it's about real research. Clarity of the abstracts. The abstracts should be at least 50 words, more or less long, and it should describe what it is about, what is like a hypothesis, what you're looking to find, what is kind of the conclusions about, so we can really understand what is this is about. And also it's important because let's pretend that you are already now getting indexed in the Scopus. Based in the title, abstracts, and keywords, people will be able to find you. So that's also something good or bad. It depends on your clarity of abstracts and metadata. Um, the quality again, and that you are in line with the aims and scope of your journal. If you're saying that it's about these topics, it should be about that topics and not just like a mix of anything that you just got because you don't have any observations in your journal. And readability of articles, just to be clear in what you are showing. Good articles with good so good articles. Journal standing, this is something that we do in Scopus. So the editor standing is we see who is the main editor and who are some of the editors. We look into them in Scopus. We see the research, what it's based on, if they had any journal edition, like if they have like any kind of background, and what is the H-index citations, if he has published something before. We look into this, and also the citedness of journal articles in Scopus. It means it doesn't matter that your journal is not in Scopus. We look if there are other sources citing already your work. So if we have these journals that have this quality that we think that is good for Scopus, and they are already citing your work, it means that your work is in line with that kind of quality, and that's what we want in Scopus. So there is a way to do it. In Scopus, you can make an advanced search. The code is ref source title. Just put your name into quotations, the name of your journal, and then you can find out how many publications are already cited your work from sources that are already in the Scopus. So you can see and try to compare benchmark yourself against another journals that are similar to you. You know better who are your peers. And again, regular issues, no delays. It's like just publish on time. That's really, really important. Most of the journals that get reviewed and discontinued from Scopus is because of delays not being on time. That's the main case of not indexing Scopus, and once you are in Scopus, we can discontinue you. So that's one of the main things that happen, and that's the main things that we discontinue journals or sources. Online availability, so you should have like a content available online. It should be at least the homepage description of your how to submit a paper. It should be in English. You are expecting people from all over the world to send more things, more articles, papers to your journal, so it should be in English, and a quality of the homepage so that it's accessible. It's easy to find the full text. It's easy to find the 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 steps to send a paper. It's easy to find who's the editor, what is the process, if it's open access or not. All these should be available and easy to find. That's what you mean by quality of homepage. So just a little bit more in depth. So the editor board, we looked at their recognized experts, that they are, just to be transparent about who are the members. You have to, again, I already mentioned this, but like what is your review process, the publication ethics. It should be published in your journal homepage, so it should be able to find that. The copyright and access, you have to describe, if it's open access, it's subscription, if it's hybrid, what is the fees, the APC, everything, just to be clear for everybody about what type of journal is yours. Also, in terms of archiving, you should be able to say, like, if you are keeping all of these, all the different issues or numbers, or for what time, and be accessible. Again, the website just to have relevant information. Again, periodicity. I mentioned this like 5 times already. This is really, really important. And the name of the journal, like you mentioned, if it's international, it should be international. Otherwise, don't put that name on the on the title of your journal. Well, we call it bonus points, but yes, ORCID is good. Why? Because this is something that we believe in, just to have a unique and persistent identifier for researchers. Is going to help us to better connect the data and have better quality in Scopus and all different places. So that's important. Funding acknowledgement. This is important also. So when somebody funded, like NIH, NSF, any funding bodies, agencies funded this, normally there is a place that is called funding acknowledgement, and we are using this now for analysis and for like this one that you can see in the Scopus. There's like analysis of which funding sponsor or funding agency is part of this research. Submission acceptance and publication dates. This is important. We also notice this. There are some predatory journals that make all the peer reviewed and everything in one day. So it's important to know this. DOIs, it's very basic, but DOIs help us to get. This is what we use in order to people, when people goes into Scopus, find something that is relevant and they want to get to the full text, we use DOIs. So this is really important to get to the full text. And well, membership scope, not necessarily, but you could be a member. Otherwise, if your my practice and publication ethics statement, it's in line with this, it's enough. It's not the only one. There are different associations, so this is good. This is one that we care about in the Elsevier and the Scopus, but there are different committees that talk about or associations that talk about publication ethics. And then there goes this topic, which is the publication ethics and publication malpractice statement, which is the place where you have to put what are your ethics behind your publication process, and also the responsibles of the editor, authors, and reviewers, and what are you going to do in order to be in line with this, and what are you going to do when you find a problem on ethics in any of your publications. So I already mentioned COPE, but there is like a World Association of Medical Editors and other associations that are talking about this and are continuously reviewing any kind of misbehavior or malpractice in publication in research. There are some guidelines. I think we will be able to share this, so you can just click on all of these links that I put in there about how to continue to have good ethics in research and publications. Also, we use cross-check. So we use cross-check in order to know if you are, copying information. So when I mentioned that there is like a rejection, in case that we find that there are like articles in your journal that are like that are copied from another journal, we automatically reject forever your publication. So your journal will be rejected forever from Scopus, and we won't index it anytime. So ethical problems, we found this a lot, like inventing data or manipulating existing research data in order to get to the things that we want. And of course, previous work sent us on, plagiarism. By the way, plagiarism is one of the main ethical problems that we find in the ELCB journals. From all the ethical problems that we found in 2012, this is like the distribution of all those, and this is something that we put a lot of information, a lot of detail and look into. So this is really important, and this is an issue, and not only in any journal that is from a university, but commercial journals like Elsevier or any other. This is just an example. This is Elsevier, and you can see there like why they retract, and the reason is they falsify mathematical findings. So this happens, and it happens to anybody, even using cross-check or Trinity or any kind of solution to find out these kind of things. There is always a way. There are a lot of different techniques of ethical malpractice. So this is important. That's why it's really important to have this in place and to follow it. So if we put that this is the actions that we are going to take, and if we find this, we should take those actions. So this is the CSAB, I already mentioned, but this is the independent board. They're completely independent. In Elsevier, the only thing that they have is they have like 2 meetings per year, and Elsevier sponsor these meetings, but that's it. We want it to be like as independent as possible. I cannot even contact these people. I cannot send an email. It's prohibited because they are completely independent. This is just a quick overview. So we are around like we receive like 3,500 title suggestions every year. Only like 30%, 33% meets the minimum criteria that I mentioned before, and only 50% of those, 32% of the 3,500 gets like gets accepted by the CSAB. So. And it takes time. So you see like this 175 from the previous years. That's why I told you like at least 1 year, but it's mostly 2 years because of we get a lot of submissions and we have to take care about this quality. Again, this is something ongoing. Don't believe that because you got into Scopus now you can do whatever you want. We want to keep the content curation in Scopus as good as possible, and this is using different things. So we get feedback directly from people. There are people that directly tell us like, this journal is not good or is malpracticing. We get this and we take it seriously. Also, we have identification from poor performing journals in terms of using metrics, benchmarking against their peers in the same discipline. And we have something called radar, which is basically we use other metrics and different analysis automatically to try to predict which journals are like outliers, in terms of performing much better than the rest and against time. but maybe it might be not necessarily a good thing. It could be about being a predatory journal. So there are some journals that maybe they publish 20 articles per year, and the next year they publish 1,000, and the next year they publish 2,000. So it's like something is going on. So we are tracking this kind of information. We send it to reevaluation. We make this curation in the content. So we decide what to discontinue, what to continue indexing, and we contacted the editors to tell them like, okay, be careful with this, be careful with that, or we are discontinuing you because we have serious concerns about your publishing practices. As I mentioned, you could be accepted. There is a temporary rejection in case you are not meeting some of these criteria, like citation, for example, already in Scopus, or for example, sometimes I've seen rejections because some articles are really good, but there are some articles that are not that so good. So they want like to have some standard quality in the journals. So I've seen this, and of course, absolute rejections were a really, really rare case. But when there are serious unethical practices in the journal, like the ones I mentioned before. How to continue being indexed in Scopus is, well, simply comply with all the mentioned requirements since you get indexed and all the time, right? So it's that's basically it. It's not easy to get in, but it's more complicated just to stay in. So that's basically one recommendation I can give to all of you. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the predatory journals because this is something that we've seen a lot, and it's growing and growing. So you can see the growth in there. The rise is pretty heavy, and in a lot of different places in the world, in Emergia. Well, we've seen a lot of these predatory journals. So we take very seriously the content quality in Scopus, and that's why we have this radar and all these projects in order to try to take these journals out Scopus. So there is not like a specific concept. There is still like a lot of different opinions about what a predatory publishing journal is, or what a predatory journal is. But well, in this case, we've seen that there are like some open access publisher articles which they are just charging a really small APC. Basically, the idea is just have profits and just publish uh, an issue every, I don't know, every week or every 2 weeks. And basically, they are like spamming authors using all these different Gmail and false accounts. And so this is something that we are taking pretty seriously in the Scopus, and they have fake editorial boards, fake reviewers, fake everything, and they just want to get as much money as possible and fast as possible because maybe tomorrow they can invent another journal, right? So we take this very seriously, and of course, we've seen that this excessive publication by the same people that are the editorial board or in the journal, excessive co-citation, excessive auto-citation, self-citation, sorry. So this is something that we've seen that is growing and growing. So, and well, there are other things that we've seen. For example, people are tending to try to publish more in conferences because they think that it's easier to get indexed as a conference. So yeah, we've seen these behaviors, and we in Scopus we know about this, and we are trying to come up with some solutions about this. And one of those is the reevaluation process. So there are some metrics that we do in order to find poor performing journals for reevaluation, which is the self-citation rate. So if it's 200 or 2 times higher than those compared to their peer journals in the subject field, everything is subject field based because it's not the same medicine as social sciences. But well, we use these metrics like total citation rate. We look into the site score if it's growing, if it's if it's half of their peers, something is wrong with that journal or is very poor performing. It means something about the content. So The number of articles, of course, we review if it's not going down. Um, the number of full text clicks, it means that people wants to get to the full text, and also the abstract. So we use these metrics in order to find out which are the journals that are underperforming, and maybe we should review again or make a re-evaluation in order to see if they should continue being in Scopus or not. And this is from 2016. We reevaluated 303 titles. This is when this project started. Um, there was 190 with publication concerns and 108 from metrics concerns in this kind of that I just mentioned. And from those, only 66 and 45, so it means 111 journals just got, continue in the Scopus, but 100 and it was 192 because there was 5 titles that directly they were not complying with any of the minimum requirements. So we just took that out and we discontinued. If you get discontinued, you have to get start the process all over again. So yes, be careful with that. It's something really important for us in terms of maintaining quality in Scopus, and that's why we are doing this. From 2016 until year to date, 2019, this is basically how we've seen this. Like journals that are underperforming, there's like 51% discontinuation rate. Those that are outlier performance, so that means that all those that I mentioned that maybe they were publishing like 20 and now 1,000, then 2,000 publications per year, 62% are getting discontinued. And of course, publication concerns in terms of malpractices, ethical malpractices, and things like that. We have like 65% discontinuation rate. And now that's why we are making public which are those journals that are discontinued in Scopus. So we don't delete the data that was before. So you can discontinue this year. It just means that you are not going to index anymore your journal. If you fix your problems, you can come back and continue being indexing in Scopus if you pass all this process. And well, basically, that's what I want to share with you. Thank you. This is my contact. And if you require something or you have any other question, please don't hesitate to make it. You can do it right now, or you can just send an email and I'll be just glad to answer to you.
Moises, thank you really much. I think the information you shared was really useful for many of us. There are some questions, please, if your time allows to answer them. Paola from the Catholic University, Ecuador, asked that how important is the human factor during the evaluation of the new titles? If there are any recommended numbers, for example, the number of citations or other metrics in order to the title can reach this point when the independent board evaluate the journal.
Yeah, so it's everything is relative. So what I mean by that is you should look into the subdiscipline. And one recommendation I make normally is go into the subdiscipline. So social sciences is very, very broad. So you can just go to a subdiscipline, look into Scopus, what is the average citation rate, and that way you can have some kind of benchmarking. So one recommendation is go to Scopus, make this Scopus Advanced Search with the Ref Search title. Try to find how many citations you got, if that trend is growing or not, and then compare that to the average that you can find in the journals that are more similar to yours. Of course, normally your citations, because you are outside Scopus, is going to be lower, but at least you can see what is the trend, and you can see how it is. I cannot tell you like I know that there are some indexes or some databases that say like 30 per year or 50, or they just have a value. In our case, that's not it. Normally what we do is we do this benchmarking against similar journals in similar subdisciplines to make it more fair, we think. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much. There's got another question from David from Peru. What makes Scopus different from the other abstracting and indexing services, for example, the Web of Science? Is that the percentage of the different type of titles like the social science, or there's any other factor?
So they're different, and it's so normally when we talk about citation and abstract databases, we can talk about Scopus, Web of Science, even Google Scholar, and Dimensions now, right? Um, so all of them are different. So way, let's I can talk, for example, from Web of Science. The difference basically is, if you can see, the Web of Science, they have the core collection, which is around 12,000 journals, a little bit more, I think. Scopus has 23,000. So of course there is a difference in there. There is some overlap. It's a big overlap. Of course, there is like I believe that we have like a 6% of the journals that Web of Science has, Scopus doesn't have, and of course we have like 11,000 more than the core collection. Of course, Web of Science has some other citation index like Cielo, which is like there's like another business model. So there's going to be difference in journals, not only in the social sciences but in different disciplines. Is going to be difference in coverage. So it means we can have the same journal, but maybe Web of Science have it for some period, and Scopus have it for some other period. So everything relates to the quality selection, and Scopus has their own, uh, requirements, the ones that I described to you. Web of Science has their own, and also they have their other. Uh, Requirements for emerging citation index, for example, that are a little bit lower in some terms. Um, so there are difference in that. There are difference in the requirements and the evaluation process, and therefore that's why there is difference in content in the size. We believe in the Scopus we have a broader index. That's what we are looking for always, like have more inclusion from arts and humanities and social sciences, but keeping a really good level of quality. If we talk about, for example, Google Scholar, they index everything, right? Well, not everything, but most of it. And this is good, this is bad. So it means that it's bigger, and you can see higher H index and higher citation numbers. But also, maybe I made a comment of your article in a blog post, in a blog post that I did in my blog, and it's counted as citation. So it means what you're trying to do with this data and what you're trying to get. I'm not saying that I think each one of those are good in some way. It means it depends what is your use case. We believe that in Scopus, it's important for you to trust that when you go there and search anything that you search, the data that you get in return is real scientific data that is going to work for your research. That's what I can comment more or less. I don't know if that's clear.
Thank you very much. One more question, if your time allows.
Yeah, sure.
Monica from Bogota asked two questions. What do you recommend for conference organizers? There's got the same criteria like the 2 years requirement, like in the journal case, or where she can collect more information about this?
Yes, so in some of the links that I put, you can go there, and there is like all the criteria for journals, for books, and for conferences. For the conferences are like again, it should have a ISSN, it should be at least 2 years. So it's pretty similar to the journals, and also you can do it in the same web page, so in the same suggestion. Scopus.com, something like that. I forgot the name of the URL. But in that one, the only change that you have is that it's going to ask you what type of source it is. It's a journal, if it's a conference. But again, most of the comments that I mentioned about the requirements in journals are very similar to the ones in the conference, and you can just go to. mm, Let me just, if you want, you still see my screen. So there are two things. Is first, you can just go to this part of the policy. Sorry about that. Or you can also write to title suggestion at scopus.com. Also, there is this email where you can write to them and ask for more information. Also, you can just go directly to, if you go to, oh, here it is. So if you go to elsevier.com, just to show you, elsevier.com dash Scopus, there is like this page of sales and all of that. But if you go to how Scopus works, there is like all this information I told you about, like quality and the content, and there is a content guide, so you can also see a little bit more details and about how we review and all of that, how to search the historical depth. But you can learn about the CSAB and the reevaluation policies. Everything that well, most of what I mentioned, you can get it here. The sources of the book, the journals, the ones that are discontinued, you can see it here. Here's a link to the title suggestion. So let me just go here for you. Yeah, of course, this is like the minimum criteria. What is who can you contact if you have any problems? But if you see, so there's like a type of serial publication. So you can put like it's a conference proceeding, and that's basically it. In terms of the requirements, it's pretty similar as the journals. You can just write to that email, but let me see where it is. Oh, the links is in the pool in the links are in the presentation, but also there is title reevaluation. There is a section for in this web page, and I can put it in the chat if you want. There is a section for the book suggestion and the conference paper selection criteria, which is pretty similar to the one in the journals. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I guess so. Let me to read the second question. Are the conference publishing services are trustful? There are some services that offer conference publishing. They follow the same process like the editorial, or it's worth it to work with them?
So that's a matter of which is the. So first of all, you have to look into who is offering you this. There's like some international, like IEEE, IOP, and there are all these other companies that I know that they offer these kind of services. And they are like global and international companies. So I think first of all you should look into these kind of details first of than making your decision. But the second part is also what is like the way that your what is the option that you want to take. So it's a matter of decision of if you want it just to be from your university, for example. I don't know exactly who you are, but if it's your conference of your university and you just want to do it by yourself, or if you want to get this help from or this collaboration with other company that is already has all this experience in doing this kind of things. My suggestion is just look into the details about the company that is offering you the services. Be careful just with who's the owner of these services. So, for example, also this is something, and maybe I'm a little bit off topic. There are some indexes or some platforms that when they want to index your data, just be careful that they say like the data is still yours, the information is yours. So when we send like a Scopus form for you to give us permission to harvest your data it still belongs to you. The research is yours. We are just only harvesting or getting this data into Scopus. So the same happens with the conference. So just be careful with that this still belongs to you, and maybe they are just providing some services to make a better conference, to have more visibility. Maybe it might be a good solution for you. It depends of also your team and how many resources you have, of course. But yeah, just be careful of that, about who the data belongs to or who the research belongs to. This kind of details that sometimes we put too much attention, but it's really important in my opinion.
Thank you very much. One more question from me, if you allow. You mentioned that no duplication permitted in the Scopus. I'm thinking about. I met some journals that allow, for example, preprint or conference proceedings to be submitted to the journal as well. What happens if okay, the preprints, I guess no, but a conference proceeding can appear in Scopus. Meanwhile, it passed the peer review of the scientific journal, and it's published with a similar title and the content in the Scopus. How you filter this content?
So actually, we have preprints in the Scopus, so that's why you can find like publications from February 2020. So we have preprints in the Scopus, and I think it's sometimes it's important, and it's because it's this happens because we're used to the Polish side of how it was, like the printed part of it, and now we don't have to wait for that. So now we have the electronic things, and we can have like an information as soon as possible. So that's a good thing in terms of having new research. You have to, of course, to be careful because normally there might be some small changes before being like the final version. However, normally the preprints that we got, it's for you to have like the latest or the newest information, which by the way, Elsevier does that, Wiley does that, Springer, all the big ones do that. So in that term, I think it's good. Also, something, I don't know if it's related to your question, but something that some editors do is they have some special issues sometimes. So that's good, and we've seen that it's good, for example, in terms of giving more citation possibilities. There's some correlation with special issues and then getting more citations. We've seen that, but of course you have to keep your periodicity, in line. But well, we think it's good to have all these other type of information. Just we don't index the numbers of journals that are only abstract. So if the journal, for example, there are some journals or some conferences that publish an issue that is only abstracts, we don't index that. So just for you to know, for example, there's this journal that publishes always full text, and there was one special issue where they just publish abstracts. We don't index that number in the Scopus, just so you know.
Yeah, I understand this part. No, I met some journals who said that the submission will be considered if the content come from, for example, a conference proceedings, and that was a little bit confusing for me because in this case generate duplicated data in the Scopus. So, for example, if the article passed the peer review in the journal, later on, for example, the conference version of the same research will be deleted from Scopus, or both articles are being indexed continuously.
Oh yeah, I see your point now. Yeah, so in the Scopus, both the conference and the proceeding from the conference and the article will be in the Scopus. How I think about this is I'm not seeing it as a bad way or a bad thing. However, I know that there are some national councils or some people making analysis on research that they are taking into consideration this for giving a different value. And the reason is normally when you are publishing an article, it's like it's more rigorous. You have to comply with more things. It should be longer. It's not the same as publishing a conference paper, right? So not necessarily I see it as a bad thing. In terms of Scopus, both of those are going to be indexed. if the conference is indexed in Scopus and the journal is indexed in Scopus, it's going to be there. And but you are going to know which is from the conference and which is from the journal. And the thing is, in the article, normally we think it's more, it's longer. It has more research. It's more strict, and the peer review is stronger. So normally researchers, and this happens, maybe it's not the same title, but you start with something, and later on you are going to research on similar topic or the same one, and you are doing more research, but basically you are citing yourself. It doesn't, so self-citation is not a bad thing if you are doing it responsibly, and it's because you are continuing your research. So I think it's not a bad thing, because of course your research is also evolving. So maybe you were just starting your research and you presented this in a conference, and there's something that this is it might be interesting or not, and you notice that it is, and you have to expand this, and later on you convert it into an article because you did more research and you went more deep into that topic. And again, just to close this, is we index both in the Scopus. If in the conference is indexed, it's going to be there, and if the journal is also indexed, it's going to be the article, even if they have the same name. Like, for example, a review, right? You have an article and they have the review of the article. Both are going to be there, but you could filter like which is the review, which is the conference, and which is the article. Which all the three, I think they have different value in terms of different parts of the life cycle of your research. So this is how I see it, and that's why it's still the three of them are going to be the Scopus, if it's index the source, of course.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Moises. If the rest of the people will have more questions, they can find you by your email you shared on your slide. Thank you very much for your time and for everything.
Thanks to you, and see you.
Have a nice afternoon. Okay, ciao, ciao.
You too. Bye bye.